Hello everyone, my name is Mathis Irindil. Today I'm going to tell you about one of my adventures in the land of Norath in Everquest. Now, I'm about as far from professional as you can get in EQ, having never really gotten far past level 30 in my life, so don't expect me to perform any miracles or anything of that sort here. But in a game like that, or this here, that's okay. Everquest is really more about the adventure than the destination, at least in the older versions of the game. So, we start at the same place everyone else enters the world of Norath, the character creation screen. I can't tell you how hard it is not for me to pick a troll shaman. 3 out of the 4 times I've played EQ, that's what I went with. Maybe I just have some sort of affinity with them? But no, I think I need to try something new. Also, that 20% experience detriment is a killer. When I play MMORPGs, I tend to lean towards the healer or the supporter classes, except in World of Warcraft. I will never tank or heal in WoW ever again. Bad experiences. Bad. So I debated on whether to play a cleric or a druid. Or I could go shaman again, just not troll. Ultimately, though, I decided to go with an erudite. I've never visited the city of Aruden before, or ever been to the continent of Otis, and I quite like their lore, so why not? Oh, and since I'm playing an entirely new race, why don't I try out a different role, too? Enchanters are a support role, but they mainly focus on crowd control and buffing allies, I believe. Yes, I think this is what I'm going with. Character created, we choose our deity, which can affect a few things about your character, such as starting location, and we enter the world. Bear with me, it's been a few years since I've played, so I just have to get used to the controls again. This is a nearly 25-year-old game after all. There is a little bit of jank. After I get semi-used to it, it's time to do the very first quest. Every new character in the game starts out with a piece of parchment that serves as your only real directive at the start of the game. Mine tells me to visit the Guildmaster of the Craft Keepers, the Erudite Enchanter Guild, Lankin Rajarn. For this, Lankin kindly gives me some new banana-colored robes, the only gear I have at the moment other than a simple dagger and a candle. After I equip them, feeling very much like I'm in a peanut butter jelly time gif from the early 2000s, Lankin tells me to visit someone named Nelusia to receive my first lesson. Finding Nelusia is easier said than done. There are no maps in this older version of EverQuest, at least nothing like you would expect from a modern MMO. Even if I was to download the beautiful hand-drawn ones players have made over the years, it wouldn't show me where I was. I'd have to go off of landmarks and things like that, very much like a real map. Well, before GPS anyways. Eventually, I do find Nelusia and her pet floating swords, but she isn't much help. To communicate with NPCs in EverQuest, you use keywords and phrases similar to how you would in old text-based games. This isn't too difficult in EQ, as the phrase they want you to use is generally in brackets. But even still, I can't seem to get Nelusia to give me my first lesson. It seems all she's interested in knowing is if I'm a citizen or a visitor, and to later retire to the local tavern in the night. I take that as my cue to go to the tavern, which again takes me an extraordinarily long time to find. Erudite is quite a nice city, I have to say. It might be mediocre compared to some of the other cities, but since most of my time in EQ is playing a troll, I did not really get to experience them, so I can't say. When I do stumble across the Vasty Deep Inn, I don't really find what I'm looking for there either. The innkeeper is of no help, and the only other person inside is someone named Shaman, and they don't want to give me the time of day. So, I give up on this quest, if it even exists in the first place, and decide to go and do some proper leveling. And the nearby Tox Forest is probably the best place I can go, since it's located right outside the city. Unlike most modern MMOs, and even classic World of Warcraft, leveling in EQ isn't primarily done through quests. It's done through fighting enemies. And this spider seems to be at our level. We should be able to Well, thankfully the guards are there to save me. Let's try this again. On a kobold rump this time. Huh. That didn't work either. Now, I'm not too worried about it. Death is something that happens in EQ, especially at the very beginning. It's impossible to find an enemy at a lower level than 1, after all. I then remember that I'm an enchanter with a shield buff, cast that on myself, and head back out, hoping for something to change. I see a moss snake and decide to make it my first real kill, but miss it by clicking on myself. For some reason I can't seem to find a way to click through my character, which is getting annoying. Once I manage to actually target the creature, it's time to engage. Maybe with my new buff I can... Oh! It's slithering away! I'm gonna get a kill! So, Troll Shaman. Much like I did with the Enchanter, Mathump here has a note to turn into the Guildmaster of the Dark Ones, the Shaman Guild here in Grob. But, unlike Lankin, Kaglari here doesn't send me on some goose chase. She's just here to teach me magic. Trolls are a simple people. I like trolls. I especially like Hoart here. She's who I'm going to be coming back to for my spells. Spells like Spirit of the Wolf. I cannot wait for Spirit of the Wolf. I like Grob too. Eridan was a beautiful city with its white marble and magic gem teleporters, but Grob, despite being absolutely disgusting and filled with things I'd never want to see in real life, just hits me right. I've always liked the more simple cities in games. Old Orgrimmar and WoW just felt cozy compared to the harsh stone and ordered infrastructure of Stormwind. Or in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, I would have liked to see more settlements like Morthal. Speaking of Morthal, I also like swamps in video games. And right outside of Grob is Inothiel Swamp, a horrible, disease-filled, snake and froglock-infected wetland. I like it. The fantasy novel I'm writing also starts in a swamp very similar to Inothiel. I don't even know what it is about them that I like. Maybe that they're just different than the standard environment? Plains and mountains are great, but they're pretty common. But now it's time to see if switching to a Troll Shaman was the right choice. I tried to kill a snake with my enchanter, so let's see if... Yeah, no, that was a lot easier. How about a rat? No problem. Another snake? I don't regret my decision. But now my inventory is too full, so I need to run back into the city and empty it. There are bags that I can buy to increase its size, but they cost far more than I currently have. Now that I'm returning, maybe I could pick up a few quests. Quests are not displayed by any floating symbol or anything like that in EQ. If someone has a task for you, then you need to investigate a little before they give it to you. Like Hergor here. After hailing him, he asks me what I want, instead of the other way around. Then asks if I want to help him get fatter. I inquire what he means about that, and he directs me to another NPC, where I meant to tell him that Hergor requires more food. Very simple, but if I had never hailed Hergor, I would never have known this was something he wanted. We find Kagrak, the NPC that Hergor wanted, next to a pile of meat that doesn't look like it came from any animal outside. He tells us that he's going to make Hergor a dung pie, but he's going to need a few ingredients, chiefly mushroom spores. So it's time to go back out into the swamp and hunt them down. On the way out, I see a few Ixar corpses, probably coming into the city to level off guards like this elf here. And that's another thing I like about EQ. Your enemies and allies aren't determined solely by your race. There's no Horde versus Alliance type system here. Each individual race is liked, disliked, and tolerated differently by all the other races. And within each of those racial factions are numerous other factions, such as class guilds. Mathunk here is a troll, which means he's tolerated by the Dark Elves and Ogres at a basic level. But if I were to cross paths with an NPC of the Ogre Shaman Guild, I'd be killed on sight. The Dark Ones and the Shaman of War, the Ogre Shaman Guild, hate each other, despite their mother factions tolerating each other. Theoretically, though, if I wanted to get into any of the cities that currently hate me, I could by grinding faction or reputation. I love things like that. Factions within factions within factions. In a sort of vengeance or irony or some other fancy term, I get my first level off of a snake. That took a little while, didn't it? This is a combination of the fact that trolls level much slower than the other races in the game, the fact that I'm not really playing optimally, and that leveling in EQ is slow in general. The game was, and is, leveling. There is endgame content, but you can find similar content at lower levels. There's no rush. Other than my hated snake nemesis, skeletons are another main target. They drop bone chips, which are useful for many low-level quests. Skeletons also drop weapons, and I'd really like to find one with a cracked staff. They sell for a large amount of money at this point in the game, and I think it might also be an upgrade for me, though I'm not certain of that. Mushrooms, right. I need 4 spores to give to the carver. They drop off of the little mushroom guys, but I think they might drop off of the mushroom men, but they are far too high level for me right now. You can't see level in this version of the game, so you need to con or consider them, which will give you a vague indication of whether or not you're ready to fight them. The mushrooms here are conning red, which means they're 2 or more levels ahead of me at this point. I will not be able to touch them. These little mushroom guys do drop the spores, but at a horrible rate. And the spores don't stack either, which means if I want to do this quest, I'll have to forego a lot of loot. While hunting shrooms and skeletons, I discovered the corpse of a fellow troll, Gungus. Now, he absolutely could have been killed by a kobold, or skeleton, or even this little mushroom spore if things went wrong. But after seeing the frog locks in the water nearby, I think they're the more likely candidate. The froglocks are the other main race that inhabit the Inithio swamp, and are the sworn enemies of the Trolls of Grob. In later versions of the game, they actually take over Grob, forcing the Trolls to live in the Dark Elf City for a time. They even became a playable race. But all that means is that they're more dangerous than the enemies we've come across to this point. They wear armor, wield weapons, and some can even cast spells. One day, when Mathok is strong enough, he'll invade their home city of Guk. One day. And, of course, while hunting mushrooms, I get almost surrounded by the croaking fiends. This one here just won't move. Maybe if I just inch closer? Nope, time to run. And yeah, there's not much I can do about them at this level other than run back to the safety of camp. Mobs don't really lose aggro on you, so will follow you forever unless you zone out of the map. That's why you have to keep the location of the nearest guards in the back of your mind at all times. Recovering after that, I ding level 3, and I've got enough bone chips to take back to Grob. Still only 3 shrooms. They are refusing to drop, but that's okay. I think the Guildmaster of the Shadow Knights is who wants the bone chips, and yes, he does. I think this is the Guildmaster anyway. I've never played a Shadow Knight. But the reward isn't anything too great. Nothing I can particularly use, since Shaman can't use swords. But it's a nice little chunk of experience. I was going to kill the skeletons anyway, so why not? But now that I've got that turned in, it's time to head back out into the swamp and hunt for... I think that might be the game telling me it's time to log off. That was quite the adventure for one day, and it's not like those fungal menaces are going anywhere. I'll be back soon, shrooms. Very soon.